Second. All right, and we are officially live. Welcome to On Mental Health and Creativity. It is a live stream series in collaboration with Made of Millions and 2020 Arts. This is the second episode of this series, which will be running all of July, Friday at 5 p.m. And my name is Megan, and I'm the director of 2020 Arts, and we produce art-focused campaigns in Toronto for charitable causes with a focus on homelessness, addiction, and of course, mental health. And I'm going to be interviewing a series of fantastic artists over the next couple of weeks, and I'm very lucky today to have Apanaki with us.
Hi, everybody.
She is the CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health Artist-In Welness, where she creates and facilitates workshops with staff and patients. And she is a Toronto-based self-taught multimedia artist and also an author, an actor, a spoken word poet, and a teacher. So she does. So I just wanted to kind of start there and just talk about how you express your creativity in all of these different mediums, and if different mediums allow you to express differently than others, and what your creative process is like.
Thank you for having me, firstly. And I actually did not get into arts until like really late, I would say. I am around 50 now, so I would say around 40, 41. So it was like relatively early. I was a writer before and was comfortable with that medium, but really needed another way to express myself. So I have to say Workman Arts, which is an organization that I'm very much a part of, gave me the opportunity to get access to free programming with all kinds of different art-based programming, from film to visual arts to sculpture, you name it, to singing, acting, that kind of thing, improv. And they also support people with mental health and addictions as well. So it happened in 2012. There was an open call for being seen. I decided, what the hell, I have nothing to lose. I submitted 2 paintings. One painting, the first painting I ever did, and then one that was a mixed media. At the time, I didn't even know what mixed media was. So I just kind of like put my spin on what the sun and the moon would look like and called it the Gungun, which means the ancestors in Yoruba. And it got into the exhibition, ran for 7 months. For Rendezvous with Madness Film Festival. It went to the Hart House, went to Gladstone Hotel. I saw how people reacted to it and they were blown away by it. And it just made me feel like, okay, maybe I could do this now. And I kind of Googled how many pieces are in a collection, 10 to 15. I proceeded to make 10 more pieces, and I called them the Gungun Collection, which was dealing with African spirituality and African ceremonial masks that were used in African spirituality. And sold a couple and pushed it everywhere, and then slowly kind of built my art practice as I went.
So how did you land on the specific mixed media that you work in? Because you work with like fabric collage. Mm-hmm. How did you get into that? Was that like your first instinct?
It was my first instinct because I'm Trinidadian. I honestly believe as an artist, that's my superpower, mainly because Trinidad and Tobago is colorful and rich in culture. Carnival is from there. Steel Pan is from there. It's a bright and colorful island that I grew up in, and cloth was very much a big part of that. Like we would go to seamstresses to get our business clothes made in order to go to work. We would, of course, help in creating costumes for masks. There are always aspects of either fabric or textiles that was used in my growing up. So I kind of gravitated to that. And I also love African fabric. I'm so in love with African fabric that I thought, what the hell? Why not use it like paint? And then I kind of found out that other people were also doing it as well. And I was like, oh, okay, so I can do this.
Yeah, your work is absolutely beautiful. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit. You were born in Toronto.
I was born in Toronto, but raised in Trinidad and Tobago. So I literally went there when I was like 1 going on 2. And then I didn't leave there until I was like 19, lived in New York for a couple years, and then came here shortly after and lived here for a bit, and then went back to Trinidad and then came back here again. So yeah.
So what was that experience like for you living between these two, I assume, very different cultures? And does that, like, do you bring those two experiences to your work, and what does that look like?
Oh, definitely. Because I always felt Trinidadian, even though I had a Canadian passport, because that's how I grew up.
Right.
But I definitely believe in the benefits here in regards to artists having a space and a place to really display their art and also to explore their artistic practice here, which I love, the fact that I'm able to do that. But also, being from those two different cultures, you could say, I kind of have gotten the best of both worlds in regards to that. And I'm really happy that I'm able to affect people with my art here. Like I make something which is truly like a one-on-one, because I create at home mostly right now. And then when my work gets out, then the effect that it has on people of the theme of what I'm doing and stuff like that resonates with them in some way. Which is really amazing to see, because sometimes people see stuff in my work that I don't even see because I'm so close to it all the time, which is really like amazing to me. Like I love having conversations about my work with people who have seen it for the first time, just to see how it's impacting them.
What are some of the responses that you get to your work that you don't necessarily see or wasn't an intention when you created it?
I actually had someone come to my house once and saw a piece that I did called Temple of the Goddess Eye, Volume 2. It's a Hema woman with scoriation marks on her back, but I chose to show those scoriation marks by using coral beads on her back. And the focus was acrylic in the center, but then fabric was done on the sides. And a friend of mine came in and started to weep because she started to see all kinds of images within the fabric pieces that I hadn't even seen. And it just made her cry. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, are you okay? She's like, don't you see it? Don't you see like the snake and the this? And I was like, no, but if you see it, then it's there. So I am happy that I'm able. She said it just made her feel something like in her core that just made her weep. So yeah, I've had people just kind of like look at my work, and I would say one of the best things and the worst things that ever happened actually was when I submitted work for the North Charleston Cultural Arts Committee in South Carolina. I got a chance to submit my work there. I had submitted my Angelou 1 year, but the following year, which I think was the 10th anniversary, it was slow. It was after Dylan Roof had killed the Charleston Nine in the church in North Charleston. And we were told to, we were doing a piece of peace was the name of the exhibition. And I submitted a piece called The Madonna and Child, the Sacred and the Profane. And it got there and everybody seemed okay with it at first. But it was a Black Madonna and child. There was a lot of symbolism in the colors that I used. And there was also actually empty bullet cases in the crush of both the Madonna and child. And that is where the problem was. Well, the problem for them was. It actually was pulled like a week after from the exhibition and reshipped to me because they believed that the family of the Charleston Nine would not understand what I meant by creating that piece. And I ended up having to write an open letter to North Charleston Cultural Arts Committee explaining all the symbolisms of it, why I believe that there may have been a statue of the Madonna and child in that prayer room where he literally killed those people, and that she was witness to that. Yeah. So I'm very comfortable in having like really difficult conversations through my art. I have to say, thank goodness that after that happened, Dr. Kim Nestor Archung got in contact with me. She lives in South Carolina and she's a doctor of philosophy. Decided to write a 5-page essay on why that picture should have been a conversation starter around colonialism and slavery and race relations in South Carolina during that time and what it meant. So that I felt really great for, but it felt sad that instead of letting me send an explanation that could be put next to the painting, they chose to pull it instead of asking me more about it. But it got legs after that. People started talking more about it after that. And it's still a talking piece up to this day, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an interesting thing as an artist when you create something, your intention and what you put out into the world and how people receive it are sometimes two very different things.
Yeah.
But I think having your work elicit such intense emotional responses on both sides of the spectrum, I think is the ultimate goal as an artist, is to make people feel so intensely that they want to think about whatever it is they're experiencing. So
exactly.
I think that's fantastic. And I think that kind of relates to, the whole title of this live stream is on self-care and creativity. So it can be therapeutic for other people to view your art, but I'm assuming, of course, that it's therapeutic for you to create your work. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of creating, how art has been therapy for you, and the different states of mind that you're in when you're creating your work?
Definitely. Art is literally therapy for me because I struggle with depression and PTSD. I think art, even before I started doing visual art, I did poetry, which was also to help me get my voice during a really hard time when I was dealing with childhood sexual abuse. So even as a teenager, I created work in order to help me. So the fact that in creating a piece, it is literally putting some of my thoughts, my energy, sometimes my mental health onto that piece as well. It is definitely something that I feel is highly therapeutic. And I've also seen the effects of it in my work that I do at CAMH as well, with inpatients who may not have a chance to be creative during the day, but for that 1 hour or so that I have them, they're able to really focus all their energies, whatever energies they may have, onto a piece and create a unique piece of art that is just theirs, that is uniquely theirs. So I can definitely say that art has saved my life, honestly. It has really helped me navigate the world. And when things become really challenging, I actually have a blank canvas that I can then, push those thoughts or those energies onto and create something that is unique. I consider myself a concept artist now, so I tend to kind of I use my mental health too for that, because I tend to visualize a lot of stuff in my head about what my work is, even the texture of the work, what I may use in the work. I even go so far back, I have a catalog of my fabric in my head sometimes. So sometimes I'm digging into bags to find just the right piece that I feel will work. And then I decide to render a collection based on that. My last collection actually was based on the Arizona Canyon. I'm trying to remember the name of the Arizona Canyon, but anyways, it's in Arizona.
Antelope? Is it
the Antelope Canyon? Yeah, Antelope Canyon in Arizona. And it's because I was on Pinterest and saw these amazing rock formations, and it just gave me a really visceral effect. And I couldn't stop looking at them. And then I started collecting pictures of them. And then I was like, I need to do a collection based on this. So so I'm literally don't quite know where I'm going to go with my next collection. I just kind of like slowly collect images, figure out what I want to do, and then maybe create 10 or how many pieces my mind thinks may work for me on those pieces. And I tend to be going bigger now because I used to be so afraid to go bigger. But now I'm not afraid of it so much. It just takes a little bit longer, but the impact is amazing, actually.
Was it a confidence thing in terms of creating bigger work, or what was the progression there?
It is a confidence thing, and also because I'm self-taught, sometimes I question how I do stuff, because I've had people who like, you're not supposed to use the edges of your canvas. And I was like, why not? Like, when you're coming up to a canvas, you see the side of it. Shouldn't there be something there instead? So, so I was learning as I was doing exhibitions that there are things that people were asking me, like, why did you do that? I was like, because I could. Like, I don't understand why you can't do that.
Yeah.
And I've used everything from alcohol inks to Kool-Aid to markers to pencils to you name it. If I haven't used it yet, it's on my list of things to use. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think like one of the themes that's come up in this live stream series so far is that you get this idea that there are these rules that you can't do art because there are these rules in place. There's these things you have to know. You have to have a formal education. But I mean, you're a very well-established artist now, and being completely self-taught, it's obvious that that's not necessarily the case.
No, it is not. And I've had a lot of other artists who are formally self-taught, who've literally spoken to me and really empowered me in my art practice. Who've literally told me, sweetie, you're doing fine. You don't have to go to OCAD. No, you don't have to take that course. Maybe you may want to take a sketch course sometime. I was like, yeah, it'll come up. But yeah, but I have to say that those who are closest to me have really empowered me in my art. And I just try and go with my gut in regards to what I want to create. Yeah.
Do you think that's what makes your art so powerful for you as a process, and then also as a product, is just following your own intuition? What role does intuition play in that process?
Oh, definitely. Like sometimes I would see something on TV that would just make me kind of pause for a minute and just say, okay, I need to do this. Or I would have a conversation with a friend and we'd be talking about something really deeply. And then I'd say, I need to do these kind of paintings, or I need to deal with this theme in this work. I've always done very female-centric work. Only because I believe that there are not enough pictures of Black people overall in art, in fine art, or as deemed fine art. And I feel that I want to make sure and make that shift, that there are going to be a lot of empowering images of Black women, Black people, people of color, because I'm not only limiting it to Black people, I also try and kind of want to delve into other people of color as well. But just to have people recognize themselves in the art, and I think that is an empowering in itself, so that it makes you feel like you're not limited to what fine art is deemed at say at the ROM or the whatever, but there are other aspects, there are other people who are creating amazing art that is also fine art, not in the formal sense of what you think fine art should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Completely agree. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to the process of creating art. I read an interview that you did talking a little bit about the process of creating when you're in a positive mindset versus maybe when you're in a slightly more negative mindset, or you're working through something mentally. What does that look like? Do you tend to create in one place, or do you find creativity in both?
It all depends. Sometimes it's the first one, which is in a good mindset because I'm excited about doing stuff. But I have to say, I have this very, very bad habit. I'm a time cruncher. So if I know that I have a collection to do and life gets in the way, and then after I know I have a deadline, I can create like nobody's business within a deadline. Unfortunately, that is not exactly, I would say, something that I would love to do long term, but it is my MO. I know that. And I tend to create better when I have that clock ticking in my head because I don't think about it too much. I don't think about what fabric I'm picking up. I don't think about how it's going to come out. I just kind of deal with just the immediate idea and feeling that I get from the canvas. I would love to, I have to say some of my work that I've taken time and process to do have also come out quite well as well. But I think my best work is literally work that I don't think too long on. Because if I do, then I'll overthink it and I'll make kind of like, okay, this doesn't work here and that kind of thing, and I'll get too much in my head. Yeah, so I have to say that that is definitely a telling thing with me in regards to my work.
Oh, I'm the same way. So I see you. It's the only way I work either. So I understand completely. So just to rewind just a little bit, if you could tell us just a little bit about your own journey with mental health and your experiences, kind of the evolution of that, that would be wonderful.
Okay, well, I would say my mental health journey has started when I was about 8 or so. Unfortunately, I was sexually assaulted by a student from my school at like a regular kind of field trip thing that we went on. And at that point, didn't feel comfortable in speaking to anybody about it. Kind of shut myself off and kind of diverted my interest into books, because at that point in time, before computers, that's how you could escape, in books. And then when I got older, I had got sexually assaulted at home by a family member, but actually by 2 family members over a period of time. And that even made me become even more reclusive. Like books became my thing, drawing became my thing, poetry became what I needed in order to use that in order to escape. And then eventually, the funny thing about it is that when I eventually came back to Canada in my 20s, I think I was 20 years old. That is when the mental health journey really impacted me, because at that time before that, you could say I was kind of like schizophrenic. I was living one life on the outside and then one life in my head, because I was dealing with these two kind of like portraying that I'm okay on the outside, but then what stuff was happening at home was happening to it seemed like to a different person. And then eventually, when I came here and I had to live on my own for the first time, I really had to sit with my thoughts, had to sit with all the things that I kept avoiding and making myself busy to deal with. And literally had to find therapy, and found group therapy, and eventually found one-on-one therapy with a therapist around my own mental health. And that in itself was, even though at the time it felt like it was awful, because it was the first time in my life I was alone. I was living in a country I didn't know. I was living on my own. And then to have to deal with that too was the first time that I really kind of, I would say, took back some of my power and realized that firstly, there was a problem that I really needed to see about in order to be able to live my best life. So it was a slow journey, but I persisted and I continued to do it. Even though when I went back home, I didn't go back into the same situation, but I felt like I had to minimize myself a bit in order to fit into the mold of what I should be in my family's home at the time, raising my kids too. And then when I got the opportunity to come back here when I was pregnant with my son, that kind of like opened it up for me to really continue the journey as a mother and really see also how my mental health would impact my children and things that I didn't want for them that I had to go through as a child and as a young woman. So it even made more sense to really take care of that in order for me to be the best mother that I could be for my children, and also to make space for them also for when they're not having very good mental health days. So one of the things that I do with my kids is they go to school, yes, but at any point in time, if they get up and they literally like, mom, mentally, I don't think I could deal with school today, they don't have to explain to me why. They get a day off. And I ask them, do you want to talk about it? If they want to talk about it with me, it's fine. If they don't want to talk about it, if they just need to have like a day off so they could just collect themselves, and I give them that, because that's something that wasn't given to me. But I also want to make space to let them know that their mental health is just as important as if they were sick and they needed to go to the doctor or what. So that is my one way in which I try to make space for my kids to be able to deal with their own mental health as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's super powerful. And I wonder a little bit about when the first time you seeked out therapy. Obviously, mental health stigma is still prevalent, but I imagine in your 20s, when you first looked for that help, that the stigma was even greater at that time. What was that process like of seeking out help, even though that stigma was very real and present?
It was me being maybe the only Black woman in the group.
Yeah.
It was me talking about some of my mental health challenges that may not have aligned with everybody else's, and making them uncomfortable, or even feeling like if there were times when I couldn't always say exactly everything that happened to me because I just felt it was a lot of stuff and I would take up a lot of space. But the fact that I still went back every single time, I had to sometimes change therapists who I felt, especially therapists that were not, who didn't understand me being a Black woman, me being, a bisexual woman, me being even understanding just what I go through as a racialized woman. I had to sometimes like cut ties with therapists and find somebody else because they were not, I didn't feel comfortable enough to really unload everything that was about me, or even have time to explain certain things that they didn't get about my day-to-day existence, that they didn't seem to understand or even want to learn about in any true sense. So yeah, I've had to deal with all of that in regards to my mental health journey.
And you can feel free to not answer any of the questions if any of them make you feel uncomfortable. But I just wonder, what was the reception with your loved ones, your family and friends around your mental health journey?
I had friends who outright told me, you can't share stuff like that. You can't talk about stuff like that. Because I'm big on sharing on Facebook. I wouldn't say like I'd go into great detail, but sometimes there are days when I just get triggered and I need to share. I have to say, I have to thank Workman Arts and stuff for having a group of also people who have their own struggles who support me in regards to my mental health journey. And also that I have a core group of friends who understand. So I have someone to go to if I can't go to my therapist, and just really just speak my truth and not feel like if I am in any way trying to like put the spotlight on me because, I've unfortunately had to get rid of a couple friends because of that. I've had to change how I deal with my family to a certain extent, because there are certain things that I want from them that they are incapable of giving me, because they also will not speak about their own mental health journey or even take any kind of ownership on some of the stuff that happened to me that could have like literally been, they could have been more supportive with. I've dealt with everything from you going to get addicted to medication. You can't be speaking about this because it may embarrass us. You can't just take it for a while, and then when you feel better, just come off of it. Like, I've heard all of those from family members and loved ones, and I have still stood in my in my truth, knowing that it is a process. It takes time. You have to work with your doctors on your medication, and there's no shame in taking medication either in order to be okay on a daily basis. And also, for me, the main thing is what it shows to my kids, what they can understand, that mental health is something that happens, that can be a part of your life, but it doesn't define only who you are by your mental health journey. So I'm hoping that within that process that I'm teaching my kids that it's okay. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to not be okay. And that there's no shame in finding a therapist or a doctor or some methods that work for you in order to be mentally okay on a daily basis, because it'll only make you better and more receptive and more loving and more capable of being open, to having a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, absolutely. And in regards to taking care of yourself first to be able to help other people, other than art, do you have any other self-care practices that you utilize?
Oh, yeah. I think actually this quarantine has kind of like literally put it in perspective about self-care. So one thing I've taken away from this is that self-care is an inward journey. And some people look at that as being selfish, and it's not being selfish at all. Because if you're mentally not well and do not have the capacity to take on everything that's going on, then you're not being good to yourself. You're not going to be good to your family. You're not going to be to anybody. It's kind of like if you're on a plane and we're going down, you put the oxygen mask on you first and you go put it on everybody else. So for me, what I want people to take away is that sometimes you just need to sit and be present with yourself. You need to kind of figure out what you need in that day, in that moment, in order for you to be okay. It could be getting up a little bit earlier so that you have some alone time before you have to deal with your kids. It could be, one of the things that I did inside my room is mommy land. From the door of my room is outside in the house. So if you want to come in mommy land, you need to stand by the door and ask permission.
It's a sacred space.
It's a sacred space. And if I feel so inclined, you can, once you're not starving or anything like that, you can get a chance to come in the sacred space for a limited time though. And then you gotta go.
That's beautiful. I love that. Setting boundaries.
So I was telling friends of mine about that. I said I had to do that in order to be sane during COVID, because sometimes when you're outside, you're mommy 365. Now you're indoors, they're driving you nuts, and you're trying to like go to the washroom and stuff like that in order to find space to be by yourself. You can make that space and make your family understand that they need to respect that you need that time for yourself, that you need that space for yourself, and that it is mommy taking care of herself, not saying that she's being selfish by having time away. Because if you can't refuel, then you can't give anything to anybody. And it wears on you over time. And then you get resentful and you start biting back at your kids and biting back at your partner, and then it becomes a thing. So, yeah.
Definitely. I found in my own life as well, it's a sustainability practice that if you don't do that periodically over time, you burn out, whether it's with your work or your relationships. And so I completely respect mommy land.
Mommy land. Mommy land. And it could be whatever land, whoever you are, whatever definition of that space that you want to make, that could be your safe bubble of which people need to respect it. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so boundaries then are very important to
Oh,
self.
yeah. Boundaries are very important to self-care. Being present also is important to self-care. Learning how to ground yourself if you feel that you're being triggered by whatever is going on in your day. And it doesn't mean like there's a trauma trigger. Maybe you feel overwhelmed. Maybe it's just too much. You can literally just sit at a chair, put your feet on the floor, put your hand over your heart, and
Mm,
just focus on your breath. Just focus on just breathing slowly until you kind of get yourself situated. That is one of the easiest ways to do it. You don't need to listen to a video or YouTube or anything like that. Just it's just you, the ground, the floor, your feet, and your breath.
absolutely. How do you have any tactics for staying present in the moment when you're maybe doing other things or you're engaged? Maybe you're in mommy mode. Do you have ways to stay present in those moments as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For me, sometimes it may be putting on music in the background and for a minute while I'm doing whatever, focusing on what is the song? Do you recognize who's singing it? Do you recognize the words that are coming from the song? It could be something as easy as just stopping for a time and just saying, okay, do you know what your full name is? Like, what are you wearing? What are you feeling now? How are you feeling in your body? Like those are ways to keep yourself present. Even just doing something as inane as if you open up your cupboard and you're just watching your cans of whatever and just kind of slowly reading the labels on it just to make sure that you are aware of what you're doing and you're taking a piece of time during that time to just kind of focus on that just for a moment, just so you know where you are and what you're doing. And it could be as easy as even when you're walking to be present, just like what what color is the sky right now? Because sometimes it changes because it's Canada. Do you hear birds? Do you hear a dog? Do you hear the cars passing? Like that kind of thing in order to just kind of keep yourself present within the moment. I think we get a lot busy with life that sometimes that part becomes really challenging because we're so busy with being busy.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's harder to just kind of slow down. But it doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be, no, it doesn't, it doesn't really need to be
Light
fancy.
any incense. You don't need to light any candles.
No, you just need to just kind of like focus on one thing. Like focus on one thing and try not to be doing anything else, like the multitasking. Because sometimes I'm like, as they say, Netflix should have a thing where it says movies that you could watch while you're on your phone. So I'm thinking, if you're going to sit down to watch a show, like literally move everything away and just have the focus on what that is. And because we do too many things, we could do 3 and 4 things at the same time. But mentally, do we need to in order to be mentally well? We don't really need to. And now, especially with quarantine, where we have no choice but to be more indoors and to be more focused on ourselves, I think we should go back to taking times to do that. One of the things that I did for me was my kids will tell you that I'm a collector of plants. I have 26. But
For my
I,
own heart.
I I consider myself a gardener, a balcony gardener. So I channeled my energy instead of doing art because it was challenging for me to do art during this time into creating life, creating plants. I have a peace plant outside. I have an avocado tree that's getting bigger. I have a little lemon tree that I made from a seed. So I love that. And I talk to them and I just kind of in the morning have a moment where I go around, check on them, and literally talk to my plants. So that helps
You're a
also with my
woman
mental health.
after my own heart. I mean, this is just a small portion of them, but I'm the same way. It just keeps you, you lose that connection with just what it is to be human. And we're so normally involved in like plant life and nature, and we're connected. And there's this very natural thing about it. And so I'm very happy to hear that you've become a plant mom as well during quarantine.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it helps a lot because the funny thing about this, and I juxtapose it with a course I did on self-care at Barbara Schleifer Clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Our group therapist gave us a plant and said, take care of this plant like it was yourself for the length of this workshop. And then let us know at the end of 6 weeks how it does. Everybody killed their plant. They overwatered, they didn't water enough. It was a mess. So at first I took it as a really personal thing that I couldn't take care of myself. I can't take care of a plant. Like, what is wrong with me, kind of thing. But then I realized that plants need a certain amount of you being present with it, because not all plants need to be wet every day. Not all plants need to be fertilized every week. Not all plants need you to be like over them all the time and just getting rid of old leaves. Some need to be left alone. So it's kind of like you have these personal batch of different individuals that have different needs that you need to be cognizant of in order to be able to keep them alive. So that is also a part of self-care, because if you're just wetting the plants or not wetting the plants or ignoring them, then you're really not focusing and being present with what it needs. So I know for some people it may be hard, but if they ever want to be on that being present journey, if they get one plant that they could really just kind of find out about, and the thing is, it's so easy now. There are apps for it now.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I could tell you when to wet the plant, when to fertilize the plant, what to do with the plant. So it's not to say like you're literally floundering and you don't know what to do. But you can use that as a way to kind of meditate and bring your presence in, and also to focus your energies on something that is as complex as you are to a certain extent. So yeah.
Definitely. I love that. I love that analogy on self-care. One that I can definitely identify with. And I know you are the Artist-In Welness at CAMH. I'd love to just learn a little bit more about what that means, but then also some of the self-care tactics that you bring to these workshops that you facilitate.
Okay, so I'm the first Artist-In Welness for CAMH, which I'm really proud to be. And I work with an amazing team at CAMH Wellness, which the main focus is on helping the staff there find ways to continue to have mental wellness while they help support people who are mentally ill. So for me, my workshops are very much like adult play to a certain extent. And it mainly focuses on creating, not necessarily on creating exactly what the workshop would say, but just about just creating. So we have done everything from alcohol inks on subway tile, which is really interesting and easy to do. It looks complex, but it's relatively easy. You can just go crazy with it. We've done things like using air dry clay to create like bowls and use leaves in order to just kind of do imprints and embossing and stuff like that on the clay. And the people have something that they can leave with. We've made like bowls and that kind of stuff. Some people have gone so far as to make fingers and hands and just kind of show their creativity. And that's what I love about my workshops, is that it can literally go from something as simple as just doing a little tile to something as how far ever you want to take your creativity to create something beautiful and unique. We've done things like finger painting, which people don't give that enough credit. But if you get adults to finger paint, you'd be surprised the kind of masterpieces that they create. So my workshops are really about just kind of connecting with creativity in a way that is relaxing and just kind of is participant driven. Where they can then create. I give them an idea of what we want to create, but I don't ever limit them to if they decide to take it off and do something like extraordinary with it.
Yeah.
I've also taught my art practice, which is textile art. So we've used like African fabrics before to create collages, that kind of thing as well. I do a really interesting workshop on superheroes. What's your superpower? Where we have channeled what virtues we believe we could create into a superpower and then create either what our superpower logo would look like. Some participants have even drawn like really in-depth characters that had wormholes and that kind of thing. So it's really interesting. I had one student of mine, one participant. I always tell this story. She was amazing. She made her superpower was being subtle. So she decided to call herself Subtle Girl. And what she'd do is that, like, if your dog was outside, like Shoppers Drug Mart, and it was lonely, she would stand there and pet it for a bit. And then after, when you were coming, she'd just leave her card on the floor next to the dog, kind of thing. Like if your sweater was unraveling, she would make sure and cut off the thing so it wouldn't hook on anything, and then she'd leave her card. Like, it was just beautiful how she came about this character. But I told her, I said, please make a comic book about it because it would be so crazy. Subtle girl just subtly just coming into your life and just making things great. So yeah.
That's amazing. All the untapped creativity and potential that people have that they just don't have outlets to express it in.
Yeah, a lot of people come to my workshops and literally say, I've never done art before. I've never done this before. And then they leave with these extraordinary, amazing pieces of artwork. And I'm like, are you sure? Is it that you just were channeling, this creative amazingness onto this canvas and you just didn't realize? And then they would also take what I taught them in their workshops and then after do it outside and create and also do it with their kids because it's simple enough that they can, make it a family event and just get the things at the dollar store and then create as well. So I've had a lot of my students, some of them who've gone on to become artists after my workshops, especially at CAMH, as not as staff, but also as inpatients, because I also do Art-Cart, which is part of Workman Arts as well, where I work with inpatients. But I've also had participants who are staff of CAMH who've literally taken what I've taught them and then did like fancy tiles for their kitchen or, a piece of artwork that they gave to a family member as a gift kind of thing. So I'm really lucky that I'm hoping that I'm giving them tools that they can then use and continue to create. And you never know, I may see one of them in an exhibition along with me as well.
That's amazing. I guess it's just the process of showing people that they can do it or giving them the space to create, to just be creative and not be tied to the final product necessarily, but just about the process of just do something, just create.
Yeah.
I know that since being in quarantine, a lot of people have started taking on like art projects, they've started gardening, they've started crocheting or baking, whatever sort of creative expression there might be. Do you have any like tips or tricks for anybody who's looking to express their creativity, but they don't know where to start? They don't know what medium to start with, and it feels a little intimidating for them.
I would say that they can definitely start with anything that they feel that they have a feel for that makes them excited. I have to say Dollarama has been the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Because there are all kinds of projects. There are projects that are literally paint by numbers or, get this birdhouse and then try something out on it or wooden designs and stuff like that. They don't have to start very big. They could slowly, make small pieces and then see how they feel about it. There are also a lot of guidelines to like Above Ground and Gortzman, which I love. Gortzman is my favorite. Where literally when you go in, staff will actually help you. When I started out, I went in there and I literally didn't know what to buy. And Mr. Gortzman, God bless his soul, was the one who was like, okay, you're doing this for the first time. You don't need anything fancy. You need this. Try it out. And then if you feel like getting anything fancy, you can, you know? So just be brave. Just pick something that you feel like you're just interested in trying out. People have been getting creative with bread. Like literally they're making like a sheet of bread, but they're using tomatoes and leeks and
Yeah.
lettuce and all kinds of stuff to make these ornate like flower gardens on the bread. They've been doing like you could find whatever really makes you happy and excited about creating. It doesn't necessarily need to be artwork per se, but just something that just brings out the child in you, that makes you excited, that makes you want to share with somebody else if you want to. There's so many ways, especially during quarantine, that we found that people have just been amazingly creative and thinking outside of the box.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually very exciting to see because, like you say, people now have the space to just slow down for a second and maybe do that thing that they've been meaning to do, but the hamster wheel has just been running so quickly they haven't had time to do it.
Yeah.
So we're at 50 minutes right now. So if anybody has any questions or any comments, feel free to share them now. I will try to cover them. If you don't and you just want to listen to the end of this live stream, that's fantastic too. But we encourage you to ask questions if you have any. So while we wait for those to come in, I'm curious, as a mental health advocate, obviously, and as a practicing artist, and now as a teacher, has teaching taught you anything about yourself and your own practice?
Oh, yes, it does. It has taught me to firstly be patient, to also not be tied to a theme of what I'm going to do that day, because sometimes that's not exactly what people need at the time. Sometimes they just need space to be, because I've also had spaces where I've had people come for the community of creating as opposed to creating. They've been happy to see other people doing stuff and didn't necessarily want to be a part of it, but just wanted to witness. And that's okay. Like it doesn't need, like I'm hoping that the space that I create for people to be really a safe space for them to create without feeling that they need to fit in any certain mold of what we're doing at the time. Because to me, that doesn't really give, creativity is about freedom, I think. And I think that that is what I need my space to be. I need it to be free. I need it to be able to, I also need to adapt and evolve with whatever the group needs on that day. And not, and I believe that when I do that, the creativity then just kind of like flows so effortlessly. And it could be like 2 participants, it could be 50 participants. I've done it with a large group and small group, and it works the same way. And I find that my participants get a lot more out of the workshop that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have one comment near the beginning of this live stream when we first started talking about your artistic practice and that you came in late to the game, let's say. And it's from Dorian. It just says, never too late to let that healthy creativity blossom. Yeah. I could not agree more. And I think considering the fact that you've only been doing this, let's say, for the past 10 years or so?
About 10 years or so.
And you have an entire online shop that everyone who's listening to this should definitely visit. You've got like print and you have masks, like you're very adaptive. I can see the adaptation in your creative expression and all of those things. So, and we have a question.
Okay.
So I'm just going to put on screen here. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I can.
It out loud. What would you say to someone afraid of sharing their mental health experience with their loved ones, i.e., how did you hone your bravery in talking about your experience?
I could totally understand that as well. It is hard speaking to your family, especially when you know that they may not be open to hearing about your mental health experience. But I would say try and have an open conversation with your family. Try and see if they'd be willing to, but also know that none of it, if your mental health is taken as something negative, know that it is not your fault. It is the fact that they may not be open quite yet to your mental health journey. They may not want to even take some ownership for some of it because they may have been not as supportive or not even there for you. What I do take from it is that there are more people out there like myself who struggle. So I try and be kind of a role model for those people. I know this could be hard for you to decide that, okay, I'm just going to be out there and share my mental health journey. But believe me, you will find more people who will be able to support you and resonate with what you're going through. If you do, and you can choose to share that with in whatever capacity you choose to. You do not have to share everything. You do not have to share, you could share as little or as much as you would like. But I would safely say that just know that if your family is not open to it, if your friends are not open to it, they have not gotten there yet. And you can definitely find a tribe of people who would be there for you and who would understand your journey just as well. So I'm hoping that this is helpful advice to you.
That was fantastically helpful advice. I completely agree with you as well. I think a lot of the time you have to stand in your own confidence and your own self-worth and value and believe that what you're feeling is important and valid. And if somebody doesn't understand that, it's actually not about you. It's more about them and where they are in their journey. And so there's a mutual respect there for each other and sort of where you are in your space at that time. So I think that's very powerful. I also think that you seeking out help at the age of 20 is also really powerful, because that was also, it was a different time than it is now. Help, not to.
No, it was totally a different time. Like there are benefits to living in that time. And then there's some that I'm just like, wow, that was hard. Yeah. But the fact that I've made it through, and the fact that, I can turn around and see the growth that happened from the time I was 20 to now, I'm really, really happy that I decided to really put my mental health journey first and not give up on it even over years that it took me to get here.
Yeah. And I assume you feel the most comfortable version of yourself and the most authentic version of yourself now, having been open and vulnerable about your experience. Yeah,
exactly.
It shows in your work too. So we have 56 minutes left, but we have one more question from Aaron. And he says, when you're brainstorming ideas, how do you know when you land on the right one?
When I can't get it out of my head, when I sleep and I dream about it, when I get up and I'm constantly thinking about it, when that's all I want to talk about. My kids are literally like, Mom, would you stop talking about it and just create it now? So that's part of my mental health stuff, that I fixate on stuff and then it just becomes a loop until I create it. So yeah, that is part and parcel of how I do my work. Like it stays there and it makes me feel like you have to do this. So until I get it out on canvas, then I can relax, kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And, it just makes me think about what you were saying earlier about just being present and the fact that you kind of draw inspiration from everything. And so if you're walking down the street and you're present and you're noticing things, the chances that you're going to be inspired by something that you see, if you were in your own space and not focusing on it, goes up immensely.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like those two things, like your creativity and being present and all of this sounds very closely tied together. And the obsessive passion, of course. Once you have that inspiration is important as well.
Yeah.
So we're at 58 minutes. So I just going to tie things up a little bit here. If anyone else has any last minute questions, you got to get them in right now. But otherwise, this has been a fantastic conversation. I so appreciate you being so open and honest and vulnerable. And the work that you do as a mental health advocate makes such a big difference. And helping other people express their creativity is fantastic. You never know when you're going to be exhibiting beside one of your students one of these days. So
I do not know that, but I also feel really humbled by the fact that I get a chance to do this, that this is literally, I think, my life's work. And I feel extremely happy to just be a small part of other people's artistic journeys as well.
That's wonderful. So absolutely, definitely keep creating. This has been the best first episode of Post One-on-One I could have possibly asked for. Kelly leaves this really, really kind note. I don't know if you can see that on your screen.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kyle, as well.
So just for anybody who is watching, this is a part of a series called On Mental Health and Creativity, and we will be doing 3 more episodes, 3 different interviews with different artists over the next 3 weeks. So definitely stay tuned every Friday at 5 p.m. That being said, Apanaki, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. And we hope you all enjoyed it. So on that note, have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.